You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
Trads. That's a word we have been hearing quite often in connection to the Sulli Deal and Bulli Bai investigations. And this word officially came to light when the Delhi police arrested two accused in the Bulli Bai case, Aumkareshwar Thakur and Niraj Bishnoi, who claim that they both are part of the online group Trad. Now, the Hindu right-wing groups in India have so far been seen as a single entity, with a common ideology of propagating larger Hindutva values. However, the recent Bulli Bai app controversy, where photos of over 100 Muslim women activists, journalists were put on an app in a mock auction and has shed light over a byproduct of this radical ecosystem, which are known by the terms of trad and raitas. You're listening to the Big Story podcast, and I'm your host Himmat. And in today's episode, we'll try to unpack what exactly are these groups, what ideology do they follow, how do you recognize one in the wild, and how do they fit in the entire propaganda ecosystem? I'm joined today by journalist Alishan Jaffrey, who works with the Wire's Hate Watch team and has been following these groups closely online, and also reports on hate crime and caste in India. Alishan, thank you so much for coming on the Big Story podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so I wanted to first know that you've been following the activity of these groups online for a while now. So, can you first help me in understanding what exactly is this trad and how did this kind of group come about?
See, all over the world, if you notice, there's this alt-right movement where traditionalists, far right, is growing, and India is no exception, especially since the rise of Narendra Modi's government and the Hindu nationalist movement in India post 2014. So,
Mm-hmm.
trad, in my opinion, is a very organic movement of far right Hindus, especially upper caste Hindus, and they are free from the ideology of the RSS. They think that they are the true Hindus, and that even Modi's nationalism or even Yogi Adityanath's version of Hindutva is not the way to go ahead with. It's actually and the Indian constitution is inadequate. It's a piece of trash. It should be repealed, and it should be replaced by the word of Manu, the Manu Smriti, and that there should be Brahman supremacy in the society. So this,
Mm-hmm.
I think, is the broad definition of trads, and they take inspiration from the Nazis and the neo-Nazis, and it's mostly an online movement, but we never know when it can come offline, and we have seen in certain cases the trad movement inspiring and helping the right wing, the mainstream right wing, to further its narrative. So
Mm-hmm.
this, I think, is the broad definition of trads.
Okay, so how did this group come about? Is there like a point of origin that you can, or is there a timeline where kind of hate speech or this kind of propaganda really came about?
See, it's been around for a while, and if you see on Reddit and on Twitter, especially on Reddit, for like 5 or 6 years, trads have been interacting, and it started with these memes about Ambedkar, and suddenly this
Mm-hmm.
became a little more radical, and uh, the anger against affirmative action or the minority advocacy in America here in India was replaced by anger against Dalits and Muslims and against reservation in general and young upper caste people with anon handles. They started to join this movement, and this is a free movement. Anybody who agrees with the ideology of the movement can join this movement, and suddenly this became a huge community of thousands and thousands of people on Reddit, on various channels on the internet, various websites, and on Telegram. There are like about
Wow.
176 groups that we monitored over the last 2 years, and also on Twitter there's this huge community of threads. So they are, if you compare them with the mainstream RSS or the BJP IT cell machinery, they are not that significant, but they are
Mhm.
very much around us, and they differ from the mainstream IT cell or the mainstream right wing on the internet, which they describe as the Raitas. And they say that these people do not understand Hinduism, and their version of Hindutva is basically inspired from, matlab, it is impure and it is inspired from Abrahamic religions, and this is going to corrupt the whole Hindu movement, and that without having the caste order in place, the word of Manu in place, this cannot be done.
Okay. So you mentioned the term raitas as well. Now, of course, that is not the dish, but how are they different? How is the trads different from raitas?
So Raitas believe in the supreme leadership of Narendra Modi, and they believe that the BJP's version of Hindu nationalism is adequate, where Islamophobia is central. However, they also believe that there should be unity amongst Hindus, and that the conundrum of the question of reservation and the conundrum of upper caste uneasiness around reservation, it should be sacrificed for the sake of the larger Hindutva cause. But trads do not agree with that, and trads even do not like the prime minister because of his caste,
Hmm.
and also because of his supposed softness against Muslims and other so-called anti-nationals.
Okay. So who are these people essentially? Like what goes in a trad group and like what do they do exactly? Like what is the discussion in trad groups like?
See, the trad groups in India are not very different from the trad groups around the world. They have normalized genocide as their pop culture. It is on the basis of their hatred and extreme hatred for minorities, Dalits, and homosexuals, that they have created a community for themselves where they only identify as the part of this movement because they hate people, and anybody who hates less is not he cannot be a trad, and he cannot be a part of this movement. So you have to be unapologetically extremely hateful to be a part of this movement, and this, I think, are the trads, and they create very problematic memes that are inspired from symbols which have been used by the far right in the US. For example, Pepe the Frog. It has a very different version in India. You have a certain Pepe the Frog in India, who is this Nazi going around and killing Muslims, lynching them, beating Dalits, whipping women, and establishing a proper society, and then gassing people, killing Dalits who are represented as cockroaches in their memes, raping women, graphically describing how women should be raped, and all this as humor and fun. It's normalized and it's shared by thousands and thousands of people in those groups, and they are basically they seem to be quite young people mostly.
So because the people arrested in the Bulli Bai case so far are also quite young. They're young adults, 18 to 23 years of age. So is that the demographic that this group traditionally is in?
Yeah, I think that's the demographic, and also the people who have been arrested in the Bully Deals case. If you go around and watch their archive tweets, old social media posts, you will find that they've abused a lot of Dalits and even right-wing people, and their targets are very. I found that they, in this Bully Deals case also, they had not just targeted Muslim women, which became the central part. Central point of conversation, and it was important. However, they had also targeted right-wing men and represented them as
Mm.
pimps of Muslim women, and they had morphed and photoshopped their pictures, and they had the same person with this account, Mithila Bull. I think it was Thakur's account, and he had mocked this very famous, influential right-wing handle, the placard guy, for his Dalit identity, and he has.
Mm.
I mean, his posts were very problematic, and this is described as, when Brendan Tarrant in New Zealand, if you see, he began the shooting in Christchurch. Before that,
Yeah.
he had released this manifesto, and it was filled with memes. And before the shooting began, he said, "You do what you have to do the shit posting." And then before the shooting fusillade became started,
Oh,
Brendan Tarrant actually said subscribe to PewDiePie, and it made no meaning. But uh, and journalists were very confused that why did he say that? But this is how the trads interact, and this is how they've crafted a new vocabulary for themselves. For example, they won't abuse Muslims directly as katua. They will say K2O or potassium oxide. So or they've made this very new vocabulary to abuse Muslims or Dalits, and you it takes a while for a person who delves into their ecosystem to know what these people are exactly talking about. And I don't even think that the trads or these young people who are doing this are very well aware of the things that they're doing, because this is an organic movement and they are clueless of the direction that it is heading to.
Hmm. So, what are their opinions of the current government? You said that they attacked PM Modi as well for his caste. But what is the general sentiment regarding the current government, and like what have the attacks been so far?
So their post, their opinion, it's filled with conspiracy theories. They think that Muslims have, somehow overpowered Modi, and Modi has been corrupted, and that Modi was never the ideal ruler because of his caste. And they refer to him with caste slurs, and they also sometimes, when he wishes Muslims or Christians on their festivals, they call him Maulana, or with all sorts of slurs which are generally hurled at Muslims or Christians.
Okay. So, other than the Bulli Bai case, is there a connection between the tribe groups and other hate crimes in India as well?
We went through a lot of trad groups and saw what they're doing. Of course, what their posts are very criminal, and they violate several sections of the IPC. There are some closed groups, and these are the posts, the ones in public domain. They are already very problematic. We have discussions wherein they are talking about procuring arms and asking people to buy weapons,
Wow.
and also there are posts where they have graphically described how a certain woman should be raped. And last year, many right-wing women were also targeted by trads. They are still writing about it on their social media. However, this is not being picked up by the media.
That's uh, quite a lot of information, which is very, very troubling as well, especially because these are young adults who may or may not know what they are actually getting into. But what is like one thing which has stood out for you about these people so far through all your investigation in this case?
I think that it's very dangerous that somebody who's so intelligent, who can create apps, and who is in a liberal institutions, who did social sciences or is studying engineering,
Hmm.
thousands and thousands of such people getting into hate crimes. So these are not regular people. They may meet you and they may talk to you normally, but beyond that, you do not expect these kind of people to be criminals or to be committing hate crimes. You have this image that somebody who will commit a hate crime would come in a mob and shout slogans, or be wearing certain sort of clothes, or be going to dharam sansads in Haridwar, or something like that. But
Hmm.
this is something very dangerous, because this creates an army of lone wolves across the country. And when it is an observation that when the activities of such people come into the public domain, when they are exposed, when it is difficult for them to function, they are left with no options to commit acts of terror.
Okay. Well, Alishan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing with us your views and also what this group essentially is.
Thank you so much.
If you liked listening to this episode, please subscribe to The Big Story for episodic updates. We're available on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website, and for any feedback, please shoot an email to podcast@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.